It is clear that he is going to use either ICE and Customs and Border Patrol with their uniforms and their automatic weapons, or he'll try to use National Guard to protect the polling places. And I have no doubt that part of that plan is potentially to claim fraud and to seize ballot boxes in order to count the votes himself. So he knows he's going to lose this election. And so he's got to find some fraudulent means to overturn what the voters want.
Well, sadly, that's my governor, J.B. Pritzker, talking. He knows all the things that Donald Trump is going to do. But if you're a resident of the state of Illinois like I am, you know how much J.B. Pritzker is obsessed with not just the president, but the presidency, and has left Illinoisans in the lurch while we fund highest tax burden, certainly with property taxes, among many others, in the nation. And I want to get to our guest, who really got my interest when he referred to J.B. Pritzker as the worst governor in the nation. Welcome back to 97.1, Bill O'Reilly, host of No Spin News and the new podcast that you are definitely going to want to listen to called We'll Do It Live. Bill O'Reilly, thank you so much for the time today on a station that you are familiar with, 97.1. It's great to have you back.
Right. Thanks for having me back, Annie. How you been?
Doing okay. It's a pleasure to speak with you. And, you know, you've had comments out there about J.B. Pritzker as a governor. Of course, his pursuit towards the presidency is a very public national one. What are your thoughts on his constant comments, criticisms of Donald Trump, and especially when it comes to elections here? You think J.B. Pritzker is going to be able to persuade enough people nationally to give him a shot at the presidency?
No. I don't think he has one chance in a million of getting that nomination. Mr. Pritzker is a political machine guy. He is, you're correct, obsessed with Donald Trump. Don't know the genesis of that, but he would be not a mainstream candidate for the Democrats to go to. They're going to have to pull back, Annie, from this radical left approach that they've embraced for the last year or so. You know, they are against voting IDs, they're against ICE, they're against closing the border, they're against Iran. I mean, you can't run a candidate or you'll get McGovern, like Nixon slaughtered George McGovern. And Pritzker is in that category. He is a radical leftist at this point in history.
Bill O'Reilly speaking with us, BillO'Reilly.com. I know that lots of you are familiar with his website and the No Spin News that you put out. I was watching a conversation you had with Glenn Beck, and you were talking about the war in Iran and about this President Donald Trump's initiative to go in and to get something done. And you made a comment in your conversation with Glenn Beck about how President Trump did the hard thing, that the easy thing was not what he decided to do in Iran. And I wonder your thoughts on this president's willingness, second term, not up for re-election, willingness to do the hard things. Is it the right thing for America at this time?
I don't know. I'm going to the White House on Tuesday. I don't know whether I'm going to have a one-on-one with the president, but often that happens when I go down. So I have to see how determined the administration is to tough it out. Obviously, if this thing drags on, he's going to get hurt politically in November. And then if he loses one or both houses in the midterm vote, this power really declines. So that has got to be a consideration. But when I said that the president did the right thing, you have to understand that threats are real when they're backed up. And when you have the United Nations coming out and saying, listen, according to our calculations, the Iranians are close to having 10 bombs, nuclear bombs. You got to take that seriously, Annie.
Yeah.
I mean, because they'll use them.
Yeah.
And so the intel from the USA and Israel and the United Nations led to Donald Trump bombing last June, which was successful. But you can't expect every lab to be knocked out. And that's what he tried to negotiate this time around. And Iran basically said, no, we're not going to cooperate. We're going to develop the nuclear weapon. So what's your choice? Let them. That's what the Democratic Party wants. Just let them go. I don't think that's wise for the world or America, obviously.
We're speaking with Bill O'Reilly, host of No Spin News. You've got a new podcast out called We'll Do It Live. One of the things that I've always appreciated about you is the no spin portion of this. There's a lot of people trying to pull people's emotions to precede and lead them into, I hated Trump this morning, so I'm going to hate everything he does this afternoon, this evening, and then wash, rinse, repeat the next day. How do you feel as though this is playing out for him politically so far, choosing a tougher policy, a harder decision to go in and take the action the way he did? Do you think he's winning or losing right now, the political battle?
Latest Rasmussen poll, which is friendly to Trump, has it 50-50. The left-wing polls that come out of The Economist and CNN, they've got it a little bit skewed down, maybe 55-45. But Americans are essentially a fair people. They understand the danger of Iran. You'd have to. Any thinking person would have to understand. So you're kind of waiting. How much do we have to suffer? How much more do we have to pay for gas and food and all that? And then they'll make their decision. It's a waiting game. So the president, again, knows that. I assume that something will break in the next week, 10 days, and I'm praying that it's good for the USA. I'm not a political party guy, by the way. I want your listeners to know that. If there's a Democrat that has a problem-solving ability, I would certainly consider voting for that person. But this I hate Trump, so everything he does is bad, I mean, that is really immature and destructive to the United States.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I want to call back to a book that you wrote called Pinheads and Patriots that I listened to the audiobook years ago. And I think that I've thought about this a lot, and I'm so excited to be able to have this conversation with you because you came up with the phrase then that you use quite a bit, SPs, secular progressives. And I'm thinking back to listening to that book, and you were really changing the way that people, I'm a conservative myself, that I view the Democrat Party, but more importantly, the liberals in the Democrat Party. And you started to identify very early on that the direction that the left was going was different than that kind of classical liberal way of approaching politics. And you were spot on with that. I wanted to ask you as a follow-up to that secular progressive moniker that you gave them decades ago now. Do you feel as though that's run its course? Do you feel as though classic liberalism might make its way back into the Democratic Party at all? Yeah,
it has to, because the party is so far left now that it just doesn't have any leadership. It really doesn't have any solutions to problems. So Pinheads and Patriots got me and Barack Obama on the cover of the book. You still get it on BillO'Reilly.com. It's still in print. And what I noticed back then is the Tip O'Neills and the classic Democratic politicians coming out of the Kennedy family, those kinds of people were being overwhelmed by this progressive movement that kind of rejects all American tradition. So when you have an open border, I mean, JFK never would have sanctioned that. In a million years, that never would have happened. And I think many liberal Americans, Democrats, were not happy. But the media has enabled the far left. The media is very, very sympathetic to the far left, Annie.
Yeah.
And so you get favorable coverage of it on CNN, on MS, on New York Times, Chicago Tribune. They like the far left because they feel that traditional America is racist and, it's a bad country and we have to do a top-down change and white men are horrible and all of this stuff that goes along with the far left. The liberal media has embraced, where you don't hear them talk about the Fettermans of the world too much in Pennsylvania, more moderate Democrats. You don't hear much about that.
And isn't that where a large part of American voters really reside, a little bit left of center, a little bit right of center? The politics kind of becomes a hobby for the people who are super into it, but most of us are pretty moderate on the issues. It seems as though there should be a big appetite to win that voter back, but it doesn't appear that the Democratic Party is really making that effort quite yet.
Depends where you live. So if you live in Illinois and you're in Cook County, Chicago, you're basically a vote Democrat no matter what. You don't really care who is in charge. If there's a D, you're going to pull a lever for that. If you live in Springfield, the capital of Illinois, then that's not an automatic. It's not the same mindset. But generally speaking, we're developing into tribes in America. It's becoming tribalism. And each group has its philosophy. And it's about the money that basically defines the group. So the George Soroses and all of these big billionaire money people financing the Democratic Party, they don't give money to the moderates. They give them to the far-left bomb throwers. And that's why you're seeing more and more of them. Because if you want to run every 2 years or even every 6 years, you got to have a lot of cash.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Bill O'Reilly is speaking with us right now, BillO'Reilly.com. And let's get into your new podcast, because I think this is where maybe the moderate kind of comes back into play when you can have a longer form conversation. I know Rob Schneider, your first guest there on the We'll Do It Live podcast. You are a broadcaster now stepping into the podcasting realm. What makes you excited about this particular venture of all of the things you're doing at BillO'Reilly.com and on your No Spin News?
Well, I didn't want to do it. Number one,
you got stronger.
My younger staff pushed me into it. And I said, look, we're doing great just running news programs out from Monday through Thursday. What do we have? And they go, no. There's a big demand that people want to see you in a longer form with it's more entertaining, get more. And I said, all right, we'll give it a try. I hate the word podcast because that conjures up two guys sitting in a basement smoking pot. That's not what we do.
That's not this.
Right?
You might get some people who want to tune in if you do that once as well.
Well, that's what Marr does.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, I wouldn't do his podcast because he smokes pot on a podcast. I'm not going to sit there and do that. All right? So I did a show because he doesn't smoke pot, but I said, hey, Marr, I'm not sitting there with you blowing smoke in my face. That's not happening. All right? But our long-form presentation, you can call a podcast if you want, is fact-based.
Yeah.
So I'm going to find, and we already have an unbelievable lineup. I just got done interviewing Steve Sciarippa from The Sopranos and Blue Bloods. And then we're going to do Lindsey Graham Monday night, which is going to be very, very explosive because the senator is certainly a hawk on Iran, and he's got a lot of information, good information. But we're information-based. I mean, we're just not throwing it out, well, what might happen here, maybe there's aliens there, and, I saw Bigfoot. We're not doing that. We're not wasting anybody's time. But the long form is definitely in. Our presentation goes all over the world, which is huge on YouTube. I mean, we do everywhere. And I think it's going to be worthy. I think people will get a lot out of it.
I really appreciate you taking the time to come on our show here in St. Louis, local radio. I've been in radio since 2006. I started 3 years in sports talk, and I would take my lunches at the local sports talk station, and I would go sit at a park, and I would listen to 97.1, and your show was airing. And I remember listening to the way you did radio. Of course, the O'Reilly Factor on. I was, in my 20s, deep into the news political world, so maybe a little bit of an aberration there. But I've watched your career from the time that I've been invested I'm 41 now. I've got 4 kids. My life has changed a lot in that amount of time. And if I could, watching you be so successful on YouTube, I watch you on News Nation. You talk to, the likes of Chris Cuomo and other people who come on there. They're incredibly fascinating conversations. It's different than the way I consumed you at the beginning of my media career. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are in the future of news coverage, because there's so much room now for politics and opinion. You've always been the no spin guy. What do you think about the future? What do you tell people who are consuming media? How do they stay diligent?
Well, I'm actually writing my final book under this contract called Confronting America, What Has to Change. And there's a bunch of media in it. And the problem with the social media is there aren't any editors. There's no rules. You can say whatever you want. And a lot of people just go on there and they believe everything that they read or hear. And they don't check it out. And it's not like when I was coming up, I mean, I had to be right. You could make mistakes. I worked at ABC as a correspondent, CBS as a correspondent, and then went over to Fox for more than 20 years. If I said something that was wrong or defamatory, I got called in.
Yeah.
I mean, we had standards that we had to adhere to. Those are gone. And the second thing is that, you're a woman who has been involved in the media since a very young age. Well, I'm sure you've seen the decline in the skill set of many national reporters and analysts. They don't know anything. It's shocking because I'm a historian / journalist. I bring in, we're the best selling nonfiction authors in the world. And I bring in a tremendous amount of fact-based, this is what happens when you do A. A leads to B leads to C. A lot of these other people who are working at very high levels, they don't know anything. and they don't know what happened in the 30s when you appease a government like Germany. They have no clue on how the United States was actually formed. They don't know. And that's shocking because it used to be only the brightest got into those positions. Now you have people who are in there and they are, let's say, shallow. That's a good word.
Yeah.
Very shallow. And the younger people don't seem to mind that. The older people, of course, do, and they'll watch something else.
Well, I think that a podcast like yours, the No Spin News, it's consumable, it's quick, it's very balanced, which is what fair and balanced, I guess you might say. The podcast, I'm looking forward to seeing a little bit more. I know there won't be the pot smoking in the PJs, thus the allure of the We'll Do It Live podcast.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Look, I get the whole thing. I'm in the business more than 50 years. I should be riding around a golf course.
You could be
playing pickleball. Me and Britt Hume are the last of the boomer generation standing. And I don't know why I'm doing this, but I got 60 people working for me, and most of them are under the age of 40. That's how this podcast came about. I mean, they were jumping up and down. I said, all right, just shut up and I'll do it.
We'll do it live.
Yeah, I mean, that thing just wore me down.
Yeah. Well, way to own it. Way to take it. 2 hands at 10 and 2 there, and we'll be looking forward to watching it. I'm really excited about the next one, Blue Bloods. I recommend Blue Bloods to everybody. It's an incredible show. Sopranos, certainly, but Blue Bloods is one that can be kind of on with the family in the room. Sopranos, not so much. We'll be listening in for the next episode of We'll Do It Live with Bill O'Reilly. Thank you for being with us today. It's an honor and a pleasure to speak with you, Bill O'Reilly.
Thank you for having me, Annie. I really appreciate it.
All right. Good luck and success to you on that podcast.